great piece of legislation in the state of Arizona is going to once and for all do away with the scourge of obscenity in the classroom. Senate Bill 1467 says that educators in the state's public universities and schools can be fired, fined, suspended if they, quote, engage in speech or conduct that would violate the standards adopted by the Federal Communications Commission concerning obscenity, indecency, and profanity if that speech or conduct were broadcast on television or radio. Dr. Alex McFarland is on the line with us. His website, alexmcfarland.com. He is the director of Worldview and Apologetics at North Greenville University in South Carolina. Dr. McFarland, welcome to the program.
Tom, it's great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. When did we begin this this epidemic of obscenity in the classroom that is so terrible that we need such draconian legislation that if one of these teachers goes home and gets naked to take a shower, he or she could be arrested?
Well, I don't think the intent of the bill is to take it that far. And to be honest, I don't know all the specifics of the particular bill, but I will say that for several decades, manners and civility have been eroding in our culture, and to encourage students to speech that is respectful and affirming of fellow human beings and not profane, I think is a good thing.
Do you think that tying somebody up and whipping them until they bleed is, falls into the category of obscenity or profanity?
Well, within art, literature, music, history, I mean, there are a lot of things that...
no, it's just a straight... I'm talking about the actual act. Actually taking another human being and tying them to a post or a tree or to whatever and whipping them until they bleed. Do you think that that's an obscene act?
Yes, obviously so.
Then how can you say that we have been losing our moral compass when that was a standard practice for the first 60 years of the existence of this country by white slave owners against black slaves?
Well, just because to recognize that we've been losing our moral compass over the past recent decades is in no way affirming some of the abuses and illegalities that took place in the early years of our nation's history.
How have we been losing our moral compass?
Well, we've been losing our moral compass in the undermining of marriage, the family, human life.
How are we undermining marriage?
We're undermining marriage in that we're now, devaluing the basic building block of society, the traditional heterosexual monogamous home, and
we're falling apart because people who are in love who don't happen to be straight can get married in 7 states.
Okay,
are you seriously saying that?
What we're going to do, we're going to take one question at a time. Back to the original question of how we are losing our moral compass. Think about this. It's common now in our culture to go to the store and hear young people using the F-bomb, to see on primetime television things that just a decade and a half, 20 years ago would have been unthinkable. On Modern
television.
Family, just week before last, they had a 3 or 4 year old girl using the F word on Modern Family. And we have become desensitized. And let me say this, our first president, George Washington, wrote a book on manners and civility, and here's what he
had people that he hired who whipped his slaves. I wouldn't be quoting him if I were you. And I would submit to you...
You would do well. You would do well to look to and affirm the accomplishments in life of George Washington, our first president, because Washington said the following. Washington said that, look, we're made in God's image. Because you're made in God's image, you have inherent worth and value and dignity. And when I treat you...
Unless you're a slave.
...and dignity, Washington, by the way, was one of the people, he did not believe in slavery.
He owned slaves. To the day he died, George Washington owned slaves. He was a Virginia plantation owner. He would not have been able to run the thing without slaves.
And thank God for the Republican Party that eventually issued the Emancipation Proclamation and got rid of slavery. But our founding fathers, including
you're trying to make this a partisan issue?
Including
is that thank God for the Republican Party that actively opposed the civil rights legislation of the 1960s?
Hey, read While We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr., and he'll talk about the fact that he said it would be disastrous for minorities to be in the hip pocket of one party. There were people on both sides, but let me say this. The abolishment of slavery was led by the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The Republican Party was the Republican Party in its early years was a very progressive party, and it stayed that way until the 1870s, and then it got in the bag with the railroads, and the Republican Party ever since then has basically been the party of wealth and privilege in this country.
Now, Tom, you know better than that. That is so simplistic and so reductionistic to simply say that the conservatives are in the hip pocket of big business. You know better than that.
Okay, I'll give you. They're not. There are no billionaires sponsoring any of these Republican candidates. Okay, fine.
We need to look at that. The Judeo-Christian worldview that our founding fathers had.
Why?
That people are made in God's image.
Our founding fathers didn't say that.
A culture that doesn't affirm life. And let me say that just even the respectfulness to let me finish a sentence. I appreciate being on. I really do. But
you could be respectful and not try to filibuster me.
So back to Arizona, since that was the point of the call, I'm glad that in the classroom, teachers are going to be held accountable for their responsibility.
You think they're not now?
To teach. Let me say this: teachers have a moral standard to present to their students that which is affirming, that which is respectful.
So you don't believe in local control of school districts. You don't believe that the local school board or the local principal, who are answerable to the local community and the local parents who show up and join the PTA and things like that, that they should have a say in the teachers. You think that the state government should, and probably ultimately the federal government. You're one of these big nanny state guys, huh?
Oh, not at all, not at all.
Then why do you want the government, at the largest government possible, inside that classroom rather than the local government?
Because teachers need to be held accountable locally, and at the state level, they need to be held accountable by the people who pay their
salary. So we need a big government to be looking into the classroom.
Yeah, we need the
to
state.
Enforce these Judeo-Christian standards.
For 5 years, so I know all about compliance issues and regulation. And so what we need to teach our students is discernment. I mean, obviously, some of the great literature in world history and in our own national history contains things that are profane. But what we need to do is teach discernment and teach kids that scatological language and language that denigrates people is while we recognize it occurs, it's not appropriate. And teachers need to be role models.
You think kids don't know that?
Pardon?
You think kids don't know that? And if they don't, isn't that an issue of parenting?
Well, it's an issue of parenting, but it's also an issue of in the classroom that our kids need to be taught what is part of the American worldview, that there is a God and we're made in God's image.
That is not. Please name any place in our founding documents where it says that we're made in God's image.
Yes, all persons are endowed by their Creator, capital C, with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
Franklin and Jefferson talked about natural law, self-evident truth.
In fact, when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, he wrote about nature's God. John Adams scratched that out and said the Christian God. You can see the original drafts. Thomas Jefferson went back in, scratched out Christian God, and said, no, nature's God. He was a deist. He wasn't a Christian. He rewrote the New Testament. It's still in print.
He implemented a statewide day of prayer. Hey, this is great.
AlexMcFarland.com is the website. Alex, thanks for being with us.
It's great, Tom. I'll come back anytime.
Okay.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Amazing. Well, it's interesting chasing logic around, like Mitt Romney's dog on the roof. There goes the dictionary.